Welcome to Craving the Heat, where desire takes the lead and every story leaves you wanting more. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments and keep up with our latest naughty stories. Judith had always prided herself on her ability to remain composed, to keep control of every situation that life threw her way. As a successful marketing executive in a prestigious firm, she was used to the high demands, the stressful deadlines, and the pressure to perform. She had built a life she was proud of with her husband, Simon. Their home was a testament to years of hard work, their careers flourishing, and their love had once been the epitome of devotion. But over the years, something began to change. The passion that had ignited their relationship from the start began to dim. The nights spent talking into the early hours of the morning, sharing dreams and desires, had dwindled to cold silences filled with the hum of their individual worlds. Simon, a corporate lawyer, had become more consumed by his work than ever. Before, the intimacy they once shared seemed like a distant memory, and Judith felt the walls closing in on her one afternoon. After a particularly grueling week of presentations and late-night work calls, Judith found herself alone at the office. Simon had gone away on yet another business trip, and Judith couldn't shake the loneliness that had crept into her heart. The house, once a sanctuary, had become an empty shell. She wandered around the office building, looking for something to distract herself when she noticed an email from Shane. An old acquaintance from college. Shane was a charismatic entrepreneur, a man who had always been magnetic in a way that made people gravitate toward him. Judith hadn't seen him in years, but they had always shared a flirty, friendly connection. The last time they had spoken, they had exchanged a few casual messages on social media, but nothing serious had ever come of it. The email he sent was simple, yet it stirred something deep inside Judith. "I'm in town for the week. Would love to catch up over dinner if you're free. Let me know, Shane." She hesitated for only a moment before replying, her fingers typing quickly. "I'd like that. Let's meet at 7 p.m. I'll text you the details." The night they met was electric. Shane's presence was undeniable, his confidence, his ease, his charm. He was everything Judith had been missing in her own marriage. Spontaneous, adventurous, and full of life. Dinner was an effortless flow of conversation, a whirlwind of laughter and shared stories. He made her feel seen, heard like the woman she used to be, before the monotony of her life had begun to weigh her down. As the night wore on, the chemistry between them became impossible to ignore. They shared a glass of wine at a bar after dinner, the dim lighting and quiet music setting the stage for an undeniable connection. Shane's touch lingered just a little too long when he handed her his jacket, his gaze holding hers with a fire she hadn't felt in years. Judith felt her pulse quicken, her body awakening to the kind of excitement she had forgotten was possible. "I've always enjoyed our conversations, Judith," Shane said, his voice low, his hand brushing a stray lock of hair from her face. "But I never realized how much I missed this. Being close to you." She could feel the heat of his words as they sunk deep into her chest. It had been so long since she had felt this desired. It wasn't just his physical presence, it was the way he made her feel alive, powerful in a way that was almost intoxicating. As they said their goodbyes at the end of the night, Shane leaned in, his lips brushing her cheek. She should have pulled away. She should have gone home, back to her empty bed, and tried to fix the problems in her marriage. But instead, she let her guard down. "Let's not say goodbye just yet," Shane whispered, his breath warm against her skin. "I've wanted you for a long time, Judith, and I think you want me too." The words hit her like a jolt of electricity. She knew she should walk away, that this was dangerous, that she was treading into territory she might never be able to come back from. But the yearning inside her was too strong. She felt seen in a way she hadn't in years, and in that moment, she wanted more. Before she could stop herself, she found herself in Shane's arms again, his lips on hers, tasting the passion that had been dormant for far too long. The kiss deepened and her mind raced. She knew this was a mistake, but she didn't want to stop. Her body was already betraying her thoughts, and as they stumbled into Shane's apartment, All of her logical reasoning disappeared. They didn't speak for the rest of the night. Words weren't needed. The urgency of their connection took over, and Judith allowed herself to indulge in the thrill, the freedom, the raw desire that had been missing in her life for so long. It was reckless. It was passionate. It was everything her marriage to Simon had ceased to be as the sun began to rise. Judith lay beside Shane, her thoughts a whirlwind of guilt and excitement. She knew she couldn't go back to her old life. Unchanged. The weight of what she had just done felt suffocating, but the thrill of the moment still lingered on her skin. The next few days were a blur. Judith couldn't stop thinking about Shane. They exchanged texts, met for more dinners. And every time they were together, it felt as though they were a perfect match. His presence made her feel young again, full of possibility and desire. It was everything she had been longing for, everything she had lost in her marriage, but the guilt was eating her alive. She tried to push it aside, to tell herself that it was just an escape, a brief diversion from the emptiness she felt with Simon. But deep down, she knew this wasn't just about the excitement of an affair, it was about something more. It was about the emotional connection she had found with Shane, the feeling of being wanted in a way she hadn't experienced in years. Then, one afternoon, Simon came home early from a business trip. He was tired, distant, but his eyes softened. When he saw Judith, she was standing in the kitchen, looking out the window, lost in thought. He walked up behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist, pulling her close. "I've missed you," he said quietly, his voice low. Judith froze. The weight of her actions pressed down on her chest, suffocating her. She knew what she had done, but she didn't know how to fix it. She wanted to confess, to tell him everything, but the fear of losing everything, her marriage, her life, held her back. "I missed you too," she lied, her voice shaky. And then the inevitable happened. Simon found out. It wasn't from Judith, but from an unexpected source, Shane. The messages had gone too far, and one night when Simon found her phone, he saw the truth laid out in black and white. He confronted her quietly, his face pale, his voice trembling with hurt. "Judith, I knew something was wrong. But this is beyond anything I could have imagined." Judith didn't try to deny it. She couldn't. The guilt was too much. She had pushed too deep into the cracks of their marriage, and now there was no going back. "Shane, I'm sorry." Judith began, but Simon cut her off. "Don't," he said, his voice breaking. "You don't need to explain. I know, I've been blind, Judith. But I won't pretend this didn't happen. We can't go back to what we were." Judith stood there, silent, as the weight of the consequences hit her. The hallway Greg had painted, the work he had put into their home, was a metaphor for their marriage. It had been fresh, clean, and full of hope. But she had pushed too deep, too far, and now nothing would ever be the same. In the weeks that followed, Judith had to face the aftermath of her choices. Shane faded away, realizing that Judith couldn't offer him the future he wanted. And Simon, broken but still determined to find a way forward, tried to rebuild their marriage. But the trust they had once shared was shattered, and the silence between them was now deafening. Judith knew she had made a mistake, one that would haunt her for the rest of her life. But as she looked at Simon, trying to repair the pieces of their broken bond, she realized that the only thing she could do now was stay silent, hoping that someday, maybe, they could rebuild the love they had lost. But for now, all she could do was wait. The weeks after Simon found out were filled with tense silences and awkward moments. The air in their home felt thick, and the conversations that used to flow easily now seemed forced and mechanical. Judith spent her days at work, trying to keep herself busy, and her nights were spent lying awake, staring at the ceiling, wondering if there was any chance at all of repairing what she had broken. Simon was distant, but not cruel. He didn't scream or accuse her. He simply withdrew into himself, burying himself further into his work, leaving Judith to navigate the wreckage of their marriage alone. The nights were the hardest. They lay in bed side by side, but there was no warmth, no comfort, just the cold distance between them. She could feel the emotional gulf widening every day, and she didn't know how to cross it. One evening, after another quiet dinner, Simon finally spoke. It was the first time in weeks that he had addressed the issue directly. "Judith, I need to know if there's anything left between us," he said quietly, his voice hoarse. "I've been thinking about it, and I don't know if I can keep living like this. You've hurt me in ways I can't even describe, and I don't know how to get past it. But I also don't want to give up just yet." His words hit Judith like a blow. She had never seen Simon so vulnerable. The man who had once been confident, self-assured, was now broken, and it was her fault. "I don't know either," Judith whispered, tears filling her eyes. "I wish I could take it back. I wish I could undo everything. But I can't. I don't know how to fix what I've done." "I don't know how to fix me." Simon sat on the edge of the bed, running his hands through his hair. He looked tired, defeated. "I don't know how to fix it either, Judith. But I want to try. I want to believe in us again. I want to believe that we can heal." Judith nodded, her heart aching with the weight of the words she couldn't say. She wanted to fix it too, but she wasn't sure how. The guilt that gnawed at her every time she looked at Simon was unbearable. She had betrayed him in the most intimate way, and now she was left with the consequences. "I want to try too," she said, her voice barely a whisper. "I don't know if I can make it right, but I'll do whatever it takes." And so they began. It wasn't easy. Every step forward felt like they were walking on fragile ground, and the fear of falling back into old patterns loomed over them like a shadow. They started therapy both individually and as a couple, trying to find a way back to each other. But the road was long, and the wounds didn't heal overnight. The hardest part was the silence. The emotional silence that had taken root between them seemed impossible to break. Judith found herself yearning for the intimacy they once had, the quiet moments when they could talk about anything and everything, their deep connection. But that connection felt lost, replaced by an uncomfortable distance. One day, months after the affair, Judith found herself sitting alone in a coffee shop, staring out the window, lost in thought. Her phone buzzed, and she glanced at the screen to find a message from Shane. "How are you? Been thinking about you." Her heart skipped a beat. She hadn't heard from Shane in weeks, not since she had cut off all contact after Simon discovered the affair. The guilt she had felt towards Simon had kept her away from Shane, but the moment she saw his name, the pull toward him was almost overwhelming. For a moment, Judith considered replying. She remembered the thrill, the passion, the way Shane made her feel alive in a way that no one else had. But then she remembered Simon, his quiet sadness, the pain in his eyes every time he looked at her. She couldn't betray him again. With trembling hands, she deleted the message. But the temptation lingered in her mind. As the days turned into weeks, Judith found herself in a quiet battle within herself. She had found a way back to Simon, but her feelings for Shane hadn't disappeared. She had felt something real with him, something deep, something that had shaken her to her core. But she couldn't undo what she had with Simon. She couldn't go back to a life of deceit and lies. One evening, after another long day at work, Judith came home to find Simon sitting in the living room, waiting for her. The light was dim, casting a soft glow over the room, and there was something different in his eyes. Something open. "I've been thinking," Simon said quietly, his voice steady. "I know this isn't going to be easy. I know I'll never forget what happened, but I wanted to give us a chance. I want to try and move forward." Judith's heart pounded. In her chest, she'd been so afraid that Simon would give up on her, that their marriage would end in silence and regret. But here he was, offering her the chance to rebuild. "I want that too," Judith whispered, walking toward him. She knelt down in front of him, her hands trembling as she reached for his. "I'm so sorry. I know I can't erase what I've done, but I want to work through it. I want to heal with you." Simon's expression softened, and he reached for her, pulling her into a gentle embrace. "I know, Judith. I know." And so they began again. It wasn't perfect, and the road ahead was still uncertain. There were still moments of doubt, still days when the silence between them felt too heavy to bear. But slowly they started to rebuild. The trust they had lost was not easily regained, but with time and patience, they found a way forward. Judith still thought about Shane from time to time, but each day as she woke up next to Simon, she realized that the love she had for him, despite everything, was still there. It wasn't the same as it once had been, but it was real. And that, she knew, was worth fighting for Dot. It was a long, slow process, but with every step forward, Judith and Simon discovered that love wasn't about perfection. It was about the willingness to fight for each other, to forgive, and to rebuild what had been broken. It was about choosing to move forward together, one small step at a time. And as the days passed, Judith found herself more at peace with the choices she had made. She had hurt Simon deeply, but she had also learned that love was not just about passion and excitement. It was about commitment, vulnerability, and the willingness to grow together no matter how difficult the journey. Their marriage, like the hallway Simon had painted, wasn't perfect. There were still cracks, still scars from the past, but it was theirs to rebuild, and they were doing it together. One day at a time, Dot, as the weeks turned into months, Judith and Simon continued their journey toward healing, but the road was anything but smooth. There were good days where they felt closer, more connected, and like the intimacy they once shared was slowly coming back to them. And there were bad days where the weight of their past mistakes, particularly Judith's affair, felt overwhelming. Judith tried everything she could think of to prove to Simon that she was committed to their marriage. She was open with him, more affectionate, and worked hard to create moments where they could reconnect. But it was slow, and sometimes she felt like they were taking one step forward only to take two steps back. But despite all the hurdles, something shifted between them one evening when they decided to take a short vacation to a cabin by the lake. They hadn't taken a trip in years. Life had gotten so busy, and they had become so lost in their routines. But Judith suggested it, and Simon, though hesitant, agreed. The cabin was rustic, surrounded by nature and quiet, the kind of place where time seemed to slow down. They spent the first day in silence, walking through the woods, taking in the fresh air, and just enjoying being away from the noise of the city. The absence of work, of obligations, made them feel lighter. But as the evening approached, something in the air began to change. Dot. It was a chilly evening when they sat by the fire, the warmth of the flames flickering in the hearth, the scent of burning wood mixed with the cool, crisp air outside, creating a serene and intimate atmosphere. They were sitting together on the couch, Judith leaning against Simon, his arm around her shoulders. Dot. It had been a while since they had shared such a simple, comfortable moment, just being together, no distractions. "No worries." Judith closed her eyes and let herself relax, her body melting into his as the fire crackled. "Judith," Simon's voice was soft but intense, pulling her from her thoughts. His hand gently brushed a strand of hair from her face, and his eyes searched hers, looking for something she didn't fully understand. "I don't want us to be like this anymore," he whispered, his voice raw with emotion. "I want us to find each other again. To feel alive with each other. To feel everything we used to feel." Judith's heart skipped a beat, the vulnerability in his words hitting her harder than she expected. She had been so focused on fixing their marriage, on proving to him that she was worth the second chance, that she hadn't realized how badly she missed the connection they had once shared. The intimacy that had gone missing, the warmth, the chemistry, it was still there, buried beneath the layers of hurt, but it was waiting to be uncovered. She leaned in slowly, her lips just a breath away from his. The air between them was thick, with unspoken feelings, the weight of their past mistakes making each second feel fragile. And then, without another word, Simon kissed her. It was soft at first, a tentative brush of lips, but soon it deepened, as if they were both desperate to reconnect, To feel each other again after all the time they had spent apart, the kiss ignited something between them. Judith felt the heat rising inside her, her pulse quickening as Simon's hands roamed gently over her body. There was no hesitation now, no guilt, no doubt. They had come to a place of understanding, and as their lips moved together, they were reminded of the love that had always been there, waiting to be reignited. Simon's hand slid down her back, pulling her closer, his touch firm but tender. Judith responded eagerly, her body reacting to him in ways she hadn't realized it still could. She could feel his heart pounding in sync with hers, the desire that had been lying dormant now surging to the surface without breaking the kiss. Simon guided her to her feet, lifting her into his arms. The warmth of his body against hers was overwhelming, and as they made their way to the bedroom, Judith's mind was lost in a fog of desire. There was no more fear, no more doubt. All that mattered in that moment was them rediscovering each other, letting go of the past and embracing the passion that had once defined their love. They didn't rush. There was no hurry to get to the end. Every touch, every kiss was savored as if they were both afraid of losing each other again. Simon's hands moved gently over her skin, rediscovering the curves of her body, the softness he had missed. Judith's fingers traced the lines of his chest, feeling the strength of him beneath her touch. The man she had once adored. When they finally came together, it was not just physical, it was emotional. It was a release, a breaking down of walls, a promise that they were still capable of something deep, something real. The passion between them was a fierce reminder of what they had once shared, but now it felt different. It was not just desire, but a deep need to be with each other. To heal together, they moved slowly, finding their rhythm, their bodies reconnecting in a way that felt like a rediscovery of their love. The pleasure was all-encompassing, and as they held each other close, Judith realized that this wasn't just about physicality. It was about healing, about forgiveness, about learning to love each other again after everything that had happened. When it was over, they lay together, tangled in each other's arms. The silence that had once been so suffocating between them was now a comfortable peace, filled with the understanding that they had come through something difficult together and had emerged stronger for it. Simon kissed the top of Judith's head, his fingers tracing the back of her neck. "I don't know what the future holds," he murmured softly, "but I want to keep trying. I want to rebuild this with you, Judith." Judith's heart swelled with emotion as she looked up at him, her eyes filled with unshed tears. "I want that too, Simon," she whispered, her voice thick with love and regret. "I don't want to lose you." They lay there in the quiet of the cabin, holding each other close, knowing that they had taken a huge step forward. The road ahead would still be filled with challenges. There were still scars, still moments of doubt, but for the first time in a long time, they both knew that they were willing to fight for each other, to fight for their love. The next morning, as they woke up wrapped in each other's arms, Judith knew that they had crossed a threshold. They were not the same as they had been before, but perhaps that was okay. The passion and connection they had rediscovered were enough to give them hope that they could rebuild together. They had both made mistakes, but in that moment, they knew they were ready to face the future side by side. And with each new day, as they continued their journey of healing and rediscovery, Judith and Simon found that love wasn't just about avoiding mistakes or chasing perfection. It was about embracing the imperfections, learning to forgive, and most importantly, fighting for each other, even when things seemed impossible. They had found their way back to each other not just through passion, but through understanding, vulnerability, and the willingness to keep going together.